Yareli is often labeled as one of the worst Warframes in the game, but why? Well, it's not actually a kit that's bad, it's a misinformation spread by players who never took the time to understand their true potential. Hey, my name is Zefā, and today I'm here to set the record straight. Yareli is, without a doubt, one of the strongest Warframes in the game. Today I'm putting an end to the Yareli slander and plan on showing you exactly why she's an insanely broken Warframe. Strap in, because we got a lot of ground to cover. To start off, let's break down everything you need to know about her abilities, and if you're paying attention, you will quickly see why she's an absolute monster. Let's start off with the passive ability. We start off strong. Just by moving, Yareli gets a free 200% critical chance increase, which basically acts like a free cricket bullseye. If your secondary doesn't have a trash tier crit chance, this is just a free DPS boost. Now let's talk about the ability that kicks things off. Of course, I am talking about Snares. Snares is one of Yareli's strongest tools, providing both crowd control and a disgustingly broken damage vulnerability. By default, this applies a 200% damage vulnerability, which means enemies take roughly 2 times more damage. And here's the wild part, this scales 1-to-1 with ability strength. The 1% ability strength equals 1% damage vulnerability. So at 300% strength, enemies take 4 times the damage, and at 400% strength, enemies take 5 times the damage. You get the idea. This stacks multiplicatively with buffs like Xata's Whisper, Roar, and Eclipse, turning Yareli into a single target monster. Each cast summons 5 bubbles that seek out enemies, ensnaring them and dealing cold damage. You can have 15 active bubbles at the same time, forming essentially a floating minefield. And the best part, this is only limited by your duration, meaning theoretically if you had infinite duration you could ensnare the entire map. Up next we have Merulina. Merulina is Yareli's primary survival tool, redirecting 90% of incoming damage to Merulina's health pool. But let's be real, we don't care about the damage redirection. What we do care about is something called Merulina gating. A simple trick that turns Yareli basically into an invincible Warframe rivaling Revenant, honestly. Merulina gating is basically a cheat code for immortality. Every time you resummon Merulina, you gain 4 seconds of invulnerability, and guess what? You can do this indefinitely, as long as you have energy. If you add Rolling Gun on top of that, that's another 3 seconds of invulnerability that you can occasionally cast. And shield getting on top of that, yeah, that's just the cherry on top. By cycling these mechanics, Yareli can achieve near permanent invincibility, making level cap survival essentially a joke, as long as you pay some attention. If you prefer riding Merulina, there are a few extra perks. You have full knockdown and stagger immunity while you're mounted, that's pretty neat I'd say. And you have good mobility, though the handling can feel weird, cause it's a K-drive at the end. Overall, whether you use Merulina for the iframes or mobility, it's an insanely strong defensive tool that makes Yareli one of the best and the tankiest frames in the game, despite what people think. Next up, we have the subsume slot, Aqua Blades. Aqua Blades are completely outclassed by other options and will always be the best candidate for subsuming another ability over it. While they can be some fun meme builds, they lack utility, damage scaling, or synergy to justify keeping them over better abilities. For a standard Yareli build, you will want one of these boosting your damage. Either Eclipse, a huge damage boost for multiplicative Gunsio weapons, Xata's Whisper, also a great damage boost if you play Banes on a multiplicative Gunsio weapon, or Roar if your weapon is a status damage focus gun or a DOT focus gun. There's also some subsumes for Skateboard Yareli, which we can recommend. There's 2, Omamori, these just grant your free survivability boost, making you even harder to kill, or Energized Munitions, if you just want to spam AoE pistols and enjoy the brain-dead gameplay. I'll go over which weapon works best with which damage buff later in video, so stick around and find out. And finally, we get to her last ability, Riptide. Riptide is primarily used for shield gating and enemy grouping. There's a specific rotation you can do to maximize your shield getting time, let me break it down for you. By invulnerable, cast a few Snares to snare enemies, usually 2 or 3 casts suffice, then use Riptide to pull enemies in, voila, you basically got a max shield getting time and CC'd enemies. Enemies caught in sea snares will also be pulled into Riptide, making the combo extremely effective. However, there's a small delay if enemies are already inside Riptide, till the sea snares will actually seek out enemies. So it's more reliable to cast them first, before casting Riptide. Riptide also has two options: a tap cast, it summons Riptide and will stay for its full duration, or a hold cast, it will suck in enemies and then explode shortly after. While Riptide and Sea Snares both deal damage, neither scale well enough to kill at high levels. Their primary function is debuffing, crowd control and shield gating. Here's some additional notes and mechanics I didn't know where to fit. Merylina with the augment Loyal Merylina also gives Yareli a self-slag immunity, though some enemy attacks can still knock her to the ground, like heavy gunner slams. While the Merylina, she's fully immune to all knockdowns and staggers, like I mentioned earlier. And then there's Merylina's damage absorption. This works similarly to Rhino's Iron Skin. While invulnerable, she absorbs damage, which is then converted into Merylina's HP pool. This makes it possible to preload Merylina with absorbed damage for Jadelight beams or the such, though this is pretty questionable at level cap. Now that we covered all of her abilities in detail, let's get into a build that works for Loyal Merylina and Merylina Guardian. The mod setup is the following. In the aura slot, we have Brief Respite. This enables shield gating with low efficiency. Blind Rage plus Transient Fortitude. Stacking the strength is insane for high vulnerability and high Eclipse percentage. Prime Flow plus Equilibrium keeps the energy economy stable while stacking 800 plus max energy for easy secondary surge stacking. Prime Continuity, this benefits all of our abilities positively. Stretch plus Cutting Drift boosts our range for battle sea snares and Riptide utility. Rolling Guard, a free status cleanse plus extra invulnerability for maximum survivability. And then lastly, the last slot is the sort of an augment slot. Either you play Loyal Merylina here or Merylina Guardian, whichever fits your playstyle the best. This build is min-max for level cap content. If you're just running normal steel path, you could swap around a few things, but I won't be covering that here, nor do I encourage that. Only do that if you really know what you're doing. As for the Arcanes and Arcane Shards, we have the following. On the Arcane side, we have Mode Augmented, more strength equals more damage, Arcane Precision for a flat 300% additive damage boost to secondary weapons. Optionally, you could play Arcane Pistolier if you're playing an ammo-hungry weapon like Agrit. This is my suggestions, not Ino's. And on the Arcane Shard side, we have 2 green shards for the +4 max corrosive stacks, enabling Armor Strip. This is also the flex spot. You can swap these if you deem them unnecessary, though we recommend them for level cap. 2 Talforged red shards, more strength equals more damage, as I said, and 1 Talforged yellow casting speed shard, essential for smoother Merylina gating and overall gameplay. With this mod setup, Yareli goes from a level 1 goon to a 100 mafia boss. Sorry, I just had to. Now let's move on to the weapons, because we have plenty of insane choices. These are personally our best choices, your opinion might differ. We got a lot of ground to cover, so I will rapid fire through them to keep this video from dragging on too long. Quick disclaimer, I don't own most of these weapons, Ino does, but rest assured, they all melt level cap demos with ease, but sadly no background footage for them. For Eclipse and Xata weapons, our personal go-to is the Tenet Plinks. The Tenet Plinks with the Toxin Progenitor, which you're seeing in the background footage, casually damage caps in with every shot. There's 2 variants here, either Secondary Acuity or Corrosive Focus with no Acuity. It's also viable, but kinda inconsistent, so we could recommend the Acuity version. You don't need a Riven for this weapon, it is already stupidly strong. For the second best choice, we have Vast Incarnon. This thing melts everything from Necromex to level cap disruptors, it frankly doesn't care. Clearly a D tier weapon. Here's the Incarnon evolutions, these explain themselves. Here is the mod config, it's just built for pure corrosive and crit. As for the Riven, if you have a Riven, only use it if it has higher percentage than the base set you're trying to replace. If not, it's not worth it. Next up, we have the Kunai Incarnon. Somehow these Starter Kunai turn into level cap demolishers. Ha, get it? Demolisher? Okay, I'll see myself out, goodbye. Well, let's move on from the cringe joke. Let's talk about the Incarnon evolutions. These explain themselves, projectile speed, self-explanatory, and for the 4th perk, you have a choice, Survivor's Edge, which is consistently active, or Death Trap Trigger, if you like switching weapons a lot, for bigger damage. Pick your poison. The build is the same as the Vasto, it is just pure corrosive and crit. And for the Riven, you could replace anything here if it has the same stats on the Riven and a higher percentage, like I mentioned in the Vasto example. That covers our recommendations for the Eclipse and Xata guns. let's move on onto raw weapons, aka status-based guns. First off, we have the Onos, the stupidly overpowered Incarnon. This weapon has an insane dot and insane initial hit damage. Basically, it has everything it needs. The Incarnon evolutions are pretty self-explanatory. As for the mod config, you could either play Lethal Torrent for more fire rate and multi-shot, or Hornet Strike for more base damage. If you're using a Riven, it goes over Lethal Torrent or Hornet Strike. And you could also swap out secondary Deadhead with Cascadia Flare, though the choice is up to you. Next up, we have the glorified Pea Shooter, Angstrom Incarnon. This weapon is pretty self-explanatory, because we all used it by now. It's pretty brain dead, shoot into a corridor, the whole thing dies, 10 out of 10, would recommend. Here's the Incarnon evolutions, and here's a mod config. Not much to say about this gun. Second to last, we have the Pocket Hyper Beam, Aphrodite. Not much to say here as well, just spam your alt fire and you'll kill anything. It is built for pure heat, and that is just pure fun. The Riven goes over the base damage, though I'd say it doesn't really matter if you have Riven or not with this one. It is just stupidly fun. And lastly, we have the Grimoire. This is built purely for alt fire spam, and guess what? It's also stupidly fun. It is modded for pure electric damage, and here you don't need a Riven unless you got a God roll, which is gonna be really rare. I promise you, we're done with the DPS weapons. Only 2 more to go. First off, we have our Primer. For priming enemies, Phage is just the best. Every other primer is in my opinion just pure copium. This is just built to prime viral, corrosive, magnetic, radiation and cold. And as for a Riven, you don't need a Riven with Phage, it is good enough as it is. And we got my baby, Arca-Titron. This is just to nuke entire rooms in seconds. It is a great trash clearing weapon. It's built for melee influence slamming, though I'm sure most of my viewers already could see this one coming. Simple, effective, devastating, not much else to say. Last on the bucket list, we have Focus and Companion Choice. The Focus school we're playing is Madurai, though honestly, play whatever you want, it doesn't really matter, it is pure preference. As for the Companion, we're using our usual Disarm Hound. If you need more details on this, on why it's insanely good, check out our Companion guide, it covers everything that you need to know. But here's the Hound build, and here's the Companion weapon build, it's the Bototen. Yikes, that was a lot of yapping, but hopefully now you understand why Yareli is insanely broken and yet completely misunderstood by 99% of the community. It's actually baffling to hear people call her garbage, especially when it's always the same people who haven't even bothered to finish the quest. So if you feel called out, good. If you still need help or want to just talk about builds, join our Discord, we've got a great community and I'd love to hit 500 members before the summer. And who knows, maybe I'll do a Discord exclusive giveaway if we get there. Speaking of giveaways, on the next video I'll be giving away my old Arca-Titron Riven to my Discord members as a thank you. Anyway, enough talk about giveaways. I hope you enjoyed the video, but for now I've got some Profiteer to farm. Peace out.